should we be turning our videos off, Joe, or just in the?
No, Alice, actually, you're very dark. You need to either turn the light on or something.
Um, yes, I'll see.
Hold on, let's go here. All right, there. Okay.
Um,
Here. And all right. We've seen the slides. They're done. We'll close this out. And all right. Well, Todd, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, welcome everyone. This is the next A Life in the Arts interview, and we're very pleased to have Tom Werder here from Morris Arts. I'm going to give a little background on the Masterwork Music and Art Foundation. For over 50 years, this organization has been supporting excellence in the arts. Today, we're really happy to be able to offer 3 levels of grant opportunities. The first is a premier grant, an award of $10,000 that goes to a young artist. And we just recently announced this year's awardee, Colin Lynch, for organ performance. We also offer community grants, grants that go out to arts organizations or people working on community arts projects. And we have a deadline of September 10th for this year's community grant offerings. And we offer competitive awards, smaller awards that go out to various initiatives. We have free classes, and we have this Zoom series, A Life in the Arts, where we're really thrilled to celebrate people who've committed their lives to the arts in a number of ways, as well as reveal some of the insights that have made their careers what they are. So with that, I'll hand it off to Joe to interview Tom.
Hi, I'm Joseph White, and I've been in and around Masterwork Foundation, my entire entire adolescent life. So, I just want to first of all welcome our guest, Tom Werder, who is the executive director of Morris Arts, which is a really important organization. I will say when I was growing up in Morristown, boy, I wish we'd had you then. Because as trying to run a theater company and other things, it was like pushing against a lot of very heavy weight a lot of the time. And I think you'd have been terrifically helpful in helping all these things succeed. Now, you run one of the best examples of a community arts organization in the nation. And you've got lots of different kinds of programming and a lot of really innovative fundraising to keep the whole thing going. So I don't know, one of our real questions about this in this series, we do like to spotlight people's artwork, but we're actually mostly interested in how people got on the path they're on. And sometimes that path is really circuitous, and sometimes it's direct and straight. But when did you first realize that this was what you wanted to dedicate your life to?
Well, it is a bit circuitous, but I was really blessed to have some teachers, particularly in high school, who were very influential in steering me towards a life in the theater. I thought is where I would remain. But you know, in early high school, I was involved in the theater department. I became the production stage manager for the theater department in my sophomore year. And having done that work in my junior high school, So it was sort of a continuation of some work I had started in junior high. But it was really a hobby. I never really thought that this life in the theater or life in the arts would be a vocation, but it was a great hobby and I loved it and I was really hooked. But I really thought I was going to be a meteorologist and a forester
Okay.
for my work. So as you can imagine, this last weekend with the hurricane, I was busy with now my hobby, which is the weather.
Mm.
But it kind of switched over in my later high school years, when I started to get exposed to some professional theater people who showed me what it was like to work professionally in the theater. I went to high school in Queens. There was a special theater program there, and we had teachers that all had worked professionally in the theater, and they had connections in New York, in the theater. So I had an internship in my senior year of high school at Playwrights Horizons, one of the premier off-Broadway theaters in New York. And I was the only high school student there. Most of them were college interns. And I had an incredible experience. And that's when the table started to tip. And I started to see other people who were making a life in the theater and started to imagine my own way there. And that's when I shifted all my college applications over to theater schools, and I ended up going to SUNY Purchase in Westchester County and studied lighting design and stage management. And and I really thought was what I was going to do is to be in production, doing stage management and lighting. And it was shortly after I graduated that I was offered the opportunity to work on some fundraising concerts. Some friends of mine from college, one of them had made a documentary film, and we needed to raise some money to distribute the film. And they said, "Well, we have access to these theaters. Let's put on a show." That old story. And we found musicians who would donate their time and come and do this concert for us because they believed in the cause. And it's when I started to put all of my background together. I was there lighting this concert, but I was also there producing this event. And it's when I first got a taste of what it meant to be in that producing role.
Yeah.
And it took all of the things I had learned as a stage manager and added some of the other interests that I had, and lo and behold, I found myself starting to wonder how I could pursue a career as a producer.
Wow.
And that's when I decided to go off to graduate school, and I went to the Yale School of Drama and studied theater administration, and had an incredible experience there. And I got to work with Lloyd Richards, who was our dean and director there, and Ben Mordecai, who was my mentor. It was the time that August Wilson was writing his plays and starting them out at Yale. So I got to be around some pretty extraordinary creative talent between the students and the faculty, and it was an extraordinary time.
Well,
So
I
that started giving me that experience that led me to this work as a producer.
I was going to say the thing that's really exciting for me to talk to, because I came in my era. You were a one-man show and you did everything,
Right.
and I'm just delighted to see that people are actually seriously studying the work of making all of this stuff work.
Right.
And how do you raise the money for it, and how do you do all that stuff? I don't know. So you actually were formally educated in that. Incidentally,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I brought a background that was a little bit unique. My peers in that program mostly did not have a production background like I did. And they mostly, were business majors.
Ah,
who really loved theater.
right.
And there was a couple of lawyers who were changing careers and wanted to apply what they knew in law. But I was the only one that I knew that had this theater production background. And in later years, as I started to work in the industry, it's one of the things that became the most valuable to me
Mm,
is knowing how this all goes together. How a
right,
show gets built from the bottom up, and why it's so darn expensive, and
right,
why it's so labor intensive, and what happens during tech week, and all of the things that affect the bottom line of the organization, really came out of the production work,
right,
and so I had a deep knowledge of that, and that was really helpful to me. But learning the industry, from in professional training was really an amazing advantage, to learn about nonprofit arts management is really what we learned how to do. And,
mm,
we learned about finance, we learned about fundraising, as you mentioned. We learned about managing people, and
mm.
it's a
That's always
job.
fun.
It's a job that has a lot of different hats,
Yeah,
and so we learned a lot about it all while were also, as students, working as full-time employees of the Yale Repertory Theater. So
right,
we were getting hands-on training running this major Lort theater, while we were learning
right.
in school. So I also got a chance to take some courses over at the Yale School of Management. So that was really great addition to my education there as well. And I took courses like the art of negotiations
Ah,
and things like that
yeah,
that were really helpful.
yeah. The so I mean, Morris Arts has its fingers in a whole lot of different pies, and there's a whole lot of different wonderful arts organizations in Morris County and around surrounding. What's something that you're particularly proud of?
Well, I'd say of all the work that we do at Morris Arts, I think our work in arts education
Mm,
has the impact where I say with some of our programs that I think we're actually saving lives with the work.
mm,
And one of those programs is a program called Her Words. It used to be called Girls Surviving, and it's a playwriting program for high school girls,
mm,
and they work on creating stories in a kind of a workshop model, and they are writing these plays based on their own personal experiences in their lives, and some of these girls are coming from really challenging circumstances,
right,
and the stories that come out of these girls in their playwriting is really extraordinary. So I've watched them do these stage readings with their families and loved ones in the audience, and I watch the reaction of the people listening to these plays, and it's just incredible. And then we do a question and answer at the end, and hearing some of these family members commenting and ask some questions about what they just saw, you can see that some real changes have happened. And these girls are in high school, and they feel like they belong somewhere,
right,
so they have like a sisterhood. And these are usually the girls that wouldn't end up on a sports team, and they're not doing great academically, but they belong with this group, and they look out for each other, and they take care of each other, and they survive high school,
right.
and it's really pretty amazing.
You know, well, of course, this last year, well, year and a half now, we've had some remarkable challenges,
Yes.
and I watched the other day a rehearsal. There, The Lion King is reopening on Broadway, and there's a just incredible video of Julie Taymor leading the opening chorus,
Yeah.
um, and which is enough to bring you to tears. But so how has that impacted what you're doing and what you're trying to create in the Morris area?
Yeah, the COVID times were a challenge that no one could have ever predicted, and
No.
I think about the beginning of it. We were about to open an art exhibition in our office space where we have an art gallery. And it was, you remember the week that everything shut down. It was the
Right.
Friday, March 13th was the day that everything shut down. And our opening was supposed to be the Thursday, the 12th. And I remember so clearly that Monday, going through the weekend, having gone through the weekend, watching the news constantly, getting more nervous about what was happening, what I was seeing, and going into work Monday morning and thinking, yeah, we can still have our opening on Thursday. I think that'll be fine. We'll just put out some hand sanitizer and,
Yeah.
we'll be okay. And then by Tuesday at noon, we were canceling everything and making other plans, and things were happening so quickly and
Right.
unfolding so fast. And we just, we packed up that Friday and left the offices, and we all thought we'd be gone for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We've
Well.
never imagined like that, I'm still in my home office.
Right.
This is where I've been working for the last year and a half. And I never in a million years would I have thought that was possible. So we were faced with this conundrum of, what do we do?
Right.
Where we are still a viable organization. Thank goodness we took advantage of a lot of the emergency fundraising sources that were available, and we were able to keep our staff employed and creating work. But you couldn't gather people. That's what we are in
Right.
the business of doing, is
Right.
gathering people in our community. So like everyone else, we learned about this medium that we're speaking on here, and everybody became experts on how to do video conferencing and how we could help teaching artists learn how to use Zoom and other platforms to bring their work to school kids who were working from home or in virtual classrooms. And we spent a fair amount of time, once we learned how to pivot, to teach our constituent artists how to take advantage of the technology and continue to get work and to
Right.
find jobs that would pay, but more importantly, to keep making art, and keep bringing it to the people that were so desperate to receive it.
Right.
I like to think about that time. Everybody talked about the first responders and how hard it must have been for all the folks working in the hospitals and all those places. But I think the artists were the second responders. Like we're what you did when you came home from your job at the hospital.
Right.
You wanted to listen to some music, or you wanted to watch a movie, or you wanted to do some painting and that would calm you down. The arts were very much a part of what was keeping people sane during
I was
this.
going to say it's the mental health portion.
Exactly. And I think that we were a big part of that for, the people that we could reach here in
Right.
Morris County, and also to help support all the organizations that we support through our work, and to help them continue to do what they did, but in a different way, so that
Right.
everybody would be, or mostly everybody would be ready when we get vaccinated like we are now, and we're ready to come back and do some live performances again. And we didn't lose many organizations in Morris County during this time,
Mhm.
and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I've been just amazed at the resilience of that organizations have they've managed to somehow figure out how to still be here. And
Right,
it's
right.
just we just hope that continues
We
because
sure do. I mean,
'cause-
it's this next period of time, I think, is going to be the trickiest.
right.
It's what does it look like as we're coming back, and now we're not just going to do it live. We probably have to do it live and video. So we're sort of taking on even more than we had before, and
Yeah.
it's going to be a very interesting time. But fortunately, the State Arts Council and the National Endowment and the big funders have stepped up to recognize that we're a part of the recovery, and we're a part of what keeps the economic engine flowing.
Yeah.
If the theaters are not open and the music is not happening, and people aren't going out to dinner beforehand, and people aren't spending their money in the community like they would normally,
Right.
so we're recognizing that we're a big part of that, and I think the big funders are recognizing that too, and it's an investment for them.
I remember, and this was about 20 years ago. I remember seeing an economic analysis of, at the time they were funding one of the many major renovations to Yankee Stadium.
Oh yeah,
And not to say, listen, I love going to a baseball game, but as an economic engine for the city of New York, Lincoln Center is a whole different order of magnitude of what it generates.
absolutely.
People don't go out and spend $100 on a meal for two at Yankee Stadium. They buy
That's right. Well, they might now, a couple
yeah,
beers
well,
thrown in, but
yeah,
we did an analysis. We took part in a national survey that Americans for the Arts did a couple of years ago, and we'll do it again in this next year. But it was studying the economic impact of the arts in a community, and we did surveys of organizations, and we did audience intercept surveys at arts events. And this went over the course of a year that all of this information was being gathered. And in Morris County, we learned that when people go out to see an arts event, each person spends an average of $32 and change on top of the price of their ticket
right.
on that evening,
Yeah.
right? And so you think about the babysitter, the dinner out, the parking, whatever, all of those costs involved in your evening, plus your ticket.
Yeah.
So and that money is staying in the community, so you're paying that
Right
restaurant
here.
for your dinner, and they're paying their employees who are also spending their money in the community, and it churns and churns and churns in our community, and that's what keeps us vibrant and alive.
Yeah. The so given that, 6 weeks ago, I would have said, well, given that we're coming to the end of this, and it's going to take a little longer.
Yeah.
I think the end is still in sight. I just don't think it's going to be as quick as we'd hoped. But so where do you see Morris Arts, and what do you want to be doing? What's your long game? 5 years from now, what do you want to be doing?
Well, a big thing that's happening right now is this growing awareness of the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're realizing that we have a big part to play in understanding our own place in perpetuating a system that has not necessarily been equitable. And we're working hard to figure out how the changes we need to make in order to improve how we do that in the community, so that we are a more equitable organization. And we're spending public money, and we're spending money from donors, and that money, we're entrusted with doing that, and we have an obligation to do it in as fair a way as possible. And so I think our work is going to shift to be more responsive to the changing demographics of our community. And we're still digesting the recent census results and understanding how Morris County, like most of the country, is becoming a more diverse county. And where our programming is reflective of that. So we're trying to do more work that comes out of our communities and is more reflective of the people who live here. And so we're, I can't necessarily describe what that looks like specifically, but we're going to be working really hard to listen to the people that we serve, and maybe more importantly, the people we haven't been serving, to figure out how we could do that better.
So one of the things that Masterwork is really interested in, that our team does, we were looking at various different ways that we could support various different things, but so we really focused on the notion of that transition between learning and being a professional in the arts. And
Yeah.
so we came up with an amount of money that we could afford to give. And so every year we have a premier award, and we're doing them in different disciplines. And so that's kind of a real focus of ours. So, but that's a hard transition to make.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, from school and into trying to actually make a living doing this stuff. And so what do you, I mean, besides all of the challenges that have always been there, I mean, it's the old thing that the college where you have 300 attendees listening to one guy give a lecture. And so there's only one job there.
Right.
and, and the arts have always been like that to some extent. But what other challenges? I mean, are there any challenges that are here today that might not have been, classically?
Well, I think there's more people who've chosen to do this kind of work. I mean, there's just more competition, I think. But I think also conversely, I think there's more opportunities to get your work out there. And I'm thinking, when I say that, I'm thinking about performers now,
Right.
And I, there's the line between amateur and professional used to be pretty firm. And now
Union
it's
membership for one thing.
for one, exactly. But that's all getting much more blurry now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, Actors Equity is just making changes right now where anyone can join the union if they get a job as an actor in a professional theater, and they're changing the way they're accepting new members. And I think that this whole the way the internet is used by people on YouTube and TikTok and all kinds of different ways, people are just shooting great quality videos of their own performance, and they could get it out there in front of millions of people if something catches fire, and we didn't have those opportunities back when I was getting started. You went to a cattle call audition in New York and you tried to get a job in the chorus, and or you auditioned 100 times and got rejected and maybe got one small part in the show, and in the meantime you were waiting tables or doing whatever you needed to do to make a living. And now I don't think it's any easier to find those jobs, but I do think it's easier to get your work seen, and so I have a young nephew who just graduated NYU as an actor, and he is uber talented, like triple threat singer, dancer, actor. And he graduated the spring before COVID hit, and what a stutter start for this kid, but he's getting his work, he's getting out there, and he's doing some performances now, and he did some things on video during the pandemic, and now a lot of people are doing video auditions. You don't even have to travel into the city to go do your audition. You send a video in on your computer. It's pretty amazing what the way it's changing to be able to maybe get exposed to more places.
Well, I was looking, and not that it hadn't hit me before, but it hit me I was just looking at the fact that now we've gone from, I mean, when I was a kid, 3 television networks.
Right.
And now we have, I don't know how many of these things. I mean, I look at all the people who want $15 a month from me, and I'm not doing that,
Yeah.
But, and actually, I would wish, yeah, I'd wish him very well. My son is a cinematographer and also NYU undergrad,
Uh-huh.
and he, but some of it's stubbornness. But no, the cattle call. The other thing that flashed in my mind is going to the first week that the original The Producers was in theaters
Right.
and watching the cattle call for Hitler's
Wow.
and going, I was at that audition.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
But
amazing.
anyway, so I get, I guess we've kind of covered. Yeah, I think stubbornness is a big part of it. I think it's just you have to really know that what you want to do and just refuse to have anything take your attention away from that.
I agree. And, I think that what hasn't changed is the people that stay in this business
Hmm.
are the people that have such incredible passion for it
Mm.
that they really can't imagine their life without doing this work,
Yes.
and maybe the more clever ones have figured out that they can be a teaching artist,
Right.
and make money doing what they do, and also be available for those auditions, and
Yeah.
cobble together a tapestry of things connected to the work, to whatever your art is, and make a living in that world, or do it the way it's been done before, where you find a flexible job where you can take time off if you get a gig, and
Okay.
you hopefully have an understanding employer who wants to support you, and you can do it that way too,
Yeah.
but everyone has to have that passion, because you wouldn't stick with it if you didn't.
It's too
There's
hard if you don't
Yeah,
have that.
it's much too hard a life, and
Yeah.
it's full of rejection and full of disappointment, and that the times where you're actually working and you have that, the way you get energized from that work, and it feeds that passion, and you keep going back for more.
Okay. Well, listen, this is wonderful. I'd like to open back up with, we have a few other people who have joined us, and I would like to, okay. All right, hold on. And I'm going to ask everybody to unmute and turn their, okay, so ask to start video Alice, and ask Todd to unmute. I don't think
Yeah.
Todd was finding that his video didn't work. You want to try again, Todd?
Okay.
No, that's what we got before, is a nice, a beautifully rectangular black piece of screen.
You're there,
Oh,
Todd.
technology.
So, but what I'd like to do is throw the floor open to questions from all of our participants here, and just, what would you like to ask Tom?
Yes. Yes, Tom. It's been an extremely insightful and inspiring interview so far. I'm blown away. But what I was listening very carefully for was in the beginning when you were talking about what it was, your background and what brought you into the arts,
Yeah.
and what that spark was and that progression. And I was listening carefully to it because that is what I want to replicate. I want to bring that to young people, and
Yeah.
and I think that's what martial arts does too. I mean, with their education. So it's not. So I think it's not just the art itself. I mean, you can try to capture that, and it does definitely move people, and they can feel it. But it's also the mentors and the people, who the
Yeah,
people are involved that make a huge difference.
I agree, Alice. And I also have to thank my parents, and some other close friends of my
Yes.
parents
Yeah.
who, we were living in Forest Hills, which is about a half-hour subway ride from Midtown Manhattan.
Mhm.
And any chance that we had to go see a performance in New York, we were doing it. And my parents, that's what my birthday gift would be tickets to something, or we would go hang out in Washington Square Park on a Saturday afternoon and listen to musicians play, or we had this incredible playground of New York City, to take advantage of, and the museums and all the places that I got brought to as a kid, so being
Yeah.
an arts lover, it's got to be the prerequisite to ever even thinking you're going to start making this work, so I do, I was fortunate to have some teachers that reinforced that later on, but it started at a pretty young age, and that's why I think our arts education programming is so important. Is we get pretty young kids to be in front of some really talented professional artists at a very young age, and even if they don't make the decision at that moment, it plants seeds for these kids about how the arts have moved them, and they'll come back to it at some point in their life.
Right. I think whereas Masterworks, I guess it's supporting the actual artists. I do think Morris Arts as making every attempt to bring it to cultivate the audience, because you need both.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
need both, and one reacts to the other, and it's a dance there. So
Right.
they're both important. The only other thing I just want to comment is that I often think of, I'm not familiar with the Masterwork history, and it existed at a time when there was nothing in Morris County. And I often think of Morris as a sort of, Masterworks as sort of a precursor of Morris Arts. And of course, we went off into a different direction. It's much, much smaller than you are, but you came in right at the right time to sort of expand and to, do what Shirley May, the founder, saw, this great big vacuum. And
Yeah,
so
I mean,
I always think of them together that way.
yeah, you bring up a really good point. We were founded actually just a few years after Masterwork was founded. So we're in our 47th year now, and maybe our 48th, I should be corrected. And so, right around that same time, right? But, our mission at the time is reflective of what you were just saying. Is our mission at the time when we were founded was we bring the arts to the center of community life, right? So we and Shirley, we were the bringers of this art that was missing from the community, right? And we realized like someone's got to bring it, so let's bring it, right? Now it's very different. There's dozens of professional organizations that are dedicated to bringing art into the center of community life. So it doesn't make sense for that to be our mission anymore. So what we've shifted our mission to is that we build community through the arts, which is a very different focus, right? So we know that the arts are the best tool, we think, for building community, but we see ourselves more as a community builder than an arts bringer anymore, So it's a significant distinction, I think.
All right. Well, listen, Tom, thank you so much for giving us this time and being with us.
It's a pleasure.
This is just, it's another great life in the arts. And I'm, as somebody who's had to play the Lone Ranger running a theater company, and that was me, and we need lighting design. Oh, well, I better learn how to do that.
Right.
But I had some good mentors with that. But it's it's really the thing that's wonderful is to have umbrella organizations and have people who are into the producing the structure of it, because artists aren't always the best people to do that. And we need people with those skills too, because otherwise nothing really happens. And
Yeah, it's a complicated business these days, and
well,
it
always was.
yeah, it always was for sure. And but it's an honor to be making a life in the arts, and
Yes.
I really don't take that for granted ever.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much. And this will be available on our Zoom channel as soon as I get finished editing it tomorrow morning. And and again, just thank you. And well, I don't really need to wish you the best of success. You got a good thing going.
Well, thanks, Joe. Thank you so
Right.
much. And
And
Todd,
thank you for all that
asking
you
me.
do.
Well,
Thank you so much.
And right. Good
Thank
night.
thank you,
And
Tom. You're an
you.
amazing voice for the arts. And thank you, Joe, our wonderful interviewer. Folks, you can
Yes.
find out more about our programs and offerings at masterworkarts.org. Hope to see you around.
okay. Good
Bye.
night, all.